I'd like to get started just getting to know you, where you're from and grow up.
Sure. Sounds good. So I grew up in Austria. I was raised by Austrian parents. We're Austrians as far as we can trace it back. Pretty much middle income family background. Both parents worked. I was bullied for, most of my school life, which was about 10 years. I took 2 to 3 years less for school than most people because I skipped 2 grades and never really had any friends. So, and then, at home, it wasn't the easiest because I grew up with a marriage that wasn't ideal. So school was kind of like my happy place. I loved going to school. I loved learning. And so I was navigating that. And it wasn't always easy, but the one thing I kind of like always knew that I had that was my safe space was my mind. So I knew that like in my mind, I could do whatever, I could think whatever, and nobody could tell me what to do. Nobody could like, kind of like influence me. And so I started having a very high self-awareness early on in my life.
And what did you want to do? Like, what did you, growing up, what were your passions?
I love playing basketball. So I did that. And I loved learning and having great conversations with adults. I wasn't really able to connect with peers. I was never really interested in talking about, what somebody else did or wore on a certain day, right? So yeah, I wouldn't say that I had really a specific professional desire, not yet. But yeah, it just involved learning. That's as far as I remember. But yeah, doing sports,
And are
playing
you still in
instruments.
Austria?
I am currently in Palo Alto in California, and my location changes every 2 to 3 weeks on average.
Oh, I'm right down the street from you in San Jose. That's so funny. We could have done this in person. That's awesome. I've been interviewing people from different countries and different states, but no one in my backyard. So that's pretty funny.
Okay, I'll message you separately about this.
How is it? Well, looking at your background and your story, you've been all over the world, right? All over the different many of places. What was that like, and how did it contribute to your business and what you do? And then we'll get into what your business is.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, my dream was always to study at Harvard or pretty much also to study abroad, but I didn't know how to afford that. I didn't know how to go about a scholarship. And also back then, the internet wasn't yet what it was today. So getting certain pieces of information were a bit harder. And I didn't grow up with a big network. I didn't grow up with like, people who could just connect me and help me out pretty much. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to study in Austria where you study for free. You don't pay anything. And then I'll just work abroad and I'll travel with, whatever money I earn. And I started doing that pretty soon. My first work abroad experience was in Nigeria. And I literally used every single minute that I had where I didn't have to go to class to travel, to attend conferences, to network with people. That was an amazing thing that in hindsight, I had no idea what a big impact that would have on my life later on.
Wow. What was one of the biggest lessons you've learned?
So I think the first lesson I learned when I went to Nigeria when I was 18 is that most countries that have a negative image in the news are absolutely not that. The majority of the people are good. The majority of people want to do good in their lives and they just want to be happy and content, like everybody everywhere. So yeah, watch less news and travel more.
Yeah. I actually haven't traveled much, especially not different countries like you have, so I'm jealous. What was your favorite place that you went to?
There's so many by now, and honestly, it's what I noticed, Lorenz. It's not about the countries, about the people that you meet and the community that you build. And some of those are Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Jamaica, Vietnam. I was so positively surprised by Vietnam.
Wow.
Like I already had good feelings about Vietnam, but when I went there, oh my God, it just exceeded everything. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm saying this is because I've never been to a country where people have been single-handedly so nice and so kind, so consistently. Like every single person I met, no matter where they work, they were just amazingly nice and kind and genuine. So
Isn't that crazy that just looking on the news can just completely shift your perspective on how a country is being portrayed.
Absolutely. And I mean, honestly, it's still something that I have to work with in my mind when I go to certain countries, you know. I'm about to visit Bangladesh soon, and I've never been, and I've also heard certain things, you know, so I still have to do that work to make sure I focus on the right aspects of what I want to experience.
And what is it that you do? What is your business industry that you're in?
So I've been running my own ad agency for almost 9 years.
Wow, congrats. I had another gentleman that was running his ad industry. As someone that's not in the ad industry, does it seem like it's oversaturated, or if there's someone that wants to get into ad or marketing, what's the difference? And can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I thought about that when I left Google and started the agency where I was like, there's so many fish in the sea. Like, who am I? What else can I contribute? And mind you, that was like almost 10 years ago. So the one thing I noticed is that I have such a unique skill set because I worked at Google, because I know so many people at Google, because I've been for so long in the industry and I have this background knowledge that our work and our output is way different from most agencies and exceeds their performance by far. And I see that by us just, you know, working with accounts where clients were working with other agencies before. And so the campaigns that we set up just continuously outperform the ones that they had in the past. So if you're good at something, there's always going to be space for you, and there's always going to be people who need your service.
And what made you want to start your own your ad agency?
So after I left Google, I was for the first time in my life in a position where I could freely decide what I wanted to do. I didn't have to attend class. I didn't have to do an exam. I didn't have to listen to any boss. I didn't have to go to any meetings. So I thought, well, how about I try living life on my own terms and seeing how that works out? Like, I really wanted to know, is it possible to live life on your own terms? And I tried it out. And after like 4 months, I made more money in a month than I made at Google in a month, like with the salary I had there. And that, while coming from a non-entrepreneurial background, like nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. So I was like, well, if I made it this far, I can probably also figure out how to make this a long-term thing and make it more sustainable. And so here I am almost 9 years later.
Was that a scary transition for you? Because you came from a place where you had a solid security.
I've very quickly learned in life, and even before that, that job is not a security. You can get kicked out any day, that you are just a number to a company. So
Mm.
to me personally, I view having my own company and being independent as much more stable and secure than having a job in a company.
And how long did you work at Google?
About a year.
1 year? What do you think you learned there helped you transition into your creating your own company?
I think it's really working with a lot of like advertisers every day. By now, I've worked with an estimated more than 3,000 advertisers, including my time at Google, where we help them grow, where I help them troubleshoot the accounts. Like, I was forced to work with such a large variety of businesses that I even challenge people these days to ask me anything that and see if I can not have an answer to a Google Ads question, because it's just something I know inside out so well. Like, you can wake me up at 2 a.m. and I can build you a campaign that most likely is going to bring you leads or purchases or anything.
Wow. And did you went to school for this?
So kind of, but not really. So my bachelor's was in, so my bachelor's was in international business. Then we were like, you have to take two specializations at the Vienna University of Economics. And I pretty much took accounting and finance because for all the other specializations you had to apply, and all of them rejected me. Like, I wasn't accepted into the international business specialization. I wasn't accepted into the marketing specialization. Like, all of those things I ended up doing later, I got rejected for, right?
Oh.
So I got into finance and accounting, struggled with that, but made it. And then for my first master's degree, I did international business, very general, but very practical. I always say my first master's was a practical bachelor's degree.
Mm.
I did that in Dubai and Shanghai. And then roughly 2 years ago, I finished a second bachelor's in psychology. So the thing was, it's just that always during my studies, I worked. So once I got to like the end of my master's, I could put my CV together as if I was a finance person, as if I was a marketing person, as if I was an HR person, just because of the diverse set of experiences I had. And that was really, really beneficial for the job application process.
Wow. I was just gonna. That was my next question. If we have a lot of young individuals, maybe graduating, just getting their masters or just getting their bachelors. What practical advice would you have for them for preparing for job applications and interviews and things like that?
Network. Like attend as many events as you can. Like the amount of conferences I went to, the amount of places I volunteered in, and I oftentimes went to events or did volunteering without knowing what the exact outcome would be, where most people would say, but do this for your CV and so on. But I think if we just do something for the CV, it places us in a box that makes us easily comparable with others, but not really makes us stand out. And so, like, I did experiences like being a language teacher in Russia for 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
going for like working for that entrepreneurship project in Nigeria, doing an exchange semester in Spain.
Definitely
So
stands out.
when companies saw that, there was immediately a story to tell. And people who have stories to tell are much more interesting than those who don't. And just to give you an example here, like especially those who are currently maybe in their bachelor's and looking to apply for their master's degree, I met with a friend today who helps people get into colleges. And the one thing that stood out for me and that stands out for them that she helps them do is create a special project for yourself, right? So let's say you are interested in solving the homelessness crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Create a project where you help homeless people, right?
Like a
Or,
nonprofit type
for
thing.
example, yeah, yeah. Or if you're interested in computers, right? Like, can you maybe build cheap computers for people somewhere else where they could need it, right? Or could you create a tutoring place for people from low income backgrounds and so on,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Wow. Yeah, and that's all lends into the experience, and then exactly builds out that story when you go to that job application. That's awesome. I do want to ask, for small businesses that are looking to gain more customers, but maybe don't have the budget as a larger company. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so I'm the last person to say that every person needs Google Ads. Typically, what I recommend people do first is improve your Google My Business profile. So just go to business.google.com and then log in. If you haven't done so yet, like create it or maybe claim it. Sometimes also businesses are not even aware of the fact that there's a profile for them out there. Get reviews on those, right? For Google, one of the most important factors for ranking websites or companies is social proof. So what do other people say about you? And the easiest way for Google to measure that is the reviews you have on your profile. So make sure you ask for that. And then also provide details on your Google My Business profile, right? Like fill it out, your description, how can people contact you, how do you add value, and all of that. Now, once you've done that, take care of your website, right? Make sure your website is presentable, easily navigatable, and navigatable. I don't even know if that's a word, but anyways, people will understand it. Make sure it's mobile optimized, right? Like one of the most common mistakes I see small businesses do is they have like way too many call to actions on their website.
Mm.
So I would go to the homepage and they would say, learn more, schedule a call, read more, and so on. Make it really simple. Like one call to action is enough and keep that the same across the website, right? So consistency is super, super important. And then the other aspect would be pricing. So a lot of times I find that small businesses severely underprice themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So either invest in hiring a coach or work on your sales skills or understand what the real value of your services is, because that in itself can be an absolute game changer.
Would it be better to have a premium price, smaller amount of customers, or a larger amount of customer base, but underpricing yourself?
So it depends. Right? Typically, the second option of what you mentioned, which is something I call like going for the masses, if you have a lower price, then that's a strategy that people go for that want to sell their business at one point, right? They just want to go for the masses. And I mean, that's okay. I respect it. I'm not too much a fan of that. I rather like to work with fewer clients, provide really good service, have a really good relationship with them, and that way I can command a premium price, because also the output will be premium, and ideally a multiple off that premium.
And now in your business, starting your business, what failures did you encounter or obstacles that you had to pivot and learn something new? Now you're running your own company.
So I think one of the major obstacles for me was that I remember, I didn't grow up with understanding what social skills really are, because I was mostly on my own. I didn't know how to build friendships and how to really, as a single child, how to really find compromise, how to deal with other people, how to deal with conflict, and so on. So I didn't always know how to correctly interpret what other people did and how they acted. And so I built stories based on that, that pretty much told a story that said, because of my flaws and my mistakes, they are now suffering, which was absolutely not true.
Interesting.
Especially in the beginning, even though we only ran campaigns, if the client was unhappy and the business didn't do well, in my head, I was taking on that whole responsibility and worry, which was absolutely not okay.
I think that happens a lot of times with people who deal with anxiety or any type of build a story right in their head, which is much worse than actually talking to the person or dealing with the situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I've learned to ask for help. I now have a support network that I can reach out to and say, hey, you know what, do you really think this is going on and what's happening? But it took me a long time to learn to ask for help. And I think that's an issue that women business owners face even more so than male business owners. And I would nowadays always encourage everybody to just reach out for help, because it only gets better. It really only gets better from there.
And you were named one of the Forbes 30 under 30, correct?
Yes.
And what was that experience like? And did it help your business? Was it not really something that you wanted to talk about? I'm not sure, because I did listen to another podcast where someone was talking that he was named 30 under 30, and it was really just a networking thing and just something to put a title on his social media, but wasn't much. But I'm curious to hear your experience.
Yeah, so I've been in that community now for 8 years, almost 9. And it has opened doors for me. Beautiful friendships have come out of it. Clients have come out of it. It's a community that I cherish. It's a community that I highly value. And, as with every network, and I've been part of a few by now, it always depends on what you make out of it. It's almost like if somebody goes to a certain university because they expect to get a job just by studying at that university, but then forgetting that, hey, well, you actually still should apply to jobs. You still should go to the interviews yourself, right? So it's to me, I mean, I got tons of PR features and so on, but that's because I reached out in certain ways to the people, right? So I took a really proactive approach and made sure I used it. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity and for the network.
That's awesome. Sounds like it's really been a great experience, and it's still continuing to go on. So that's cool.
Yeah. And I was, already 7 years ago. So it has a long-term effect. I'm not going to
lie. Now going through I think I was listening to a podcast you were on before, and you talked about something about having a mentor. What is the importance of having a mentor, and how do we, as individuals, find one ourselves?
Yeah, I think I want to preface that by kind of saying I've gotten way more no's from people to support me than yeses. So it's until you find that person, you might have to go through a lot of no's, and it's not going to be easy. Now, since I've come to peace with accepting help, it's also been easier for me to connect with mentors, to connect with coaches, and so on. And I think mentors, you automatically recognize them because you get a good feeling about them, that they're willing to support you. And that's not necessarily something measurable, right? It could be professors. One of the things I wish I did much more in university is literally take every professor out for a coffee chat and ask them about their experience, ask them about their professional lives. And I didn't do that. And I so wish I'd done that, because I'm sure that each one of these individuals would have so much to talk about, so much more to talk about than just what they presented in the lecture.
Right.
So that's extremely important. And these days, there's a few people, less than a handful, that I view as mentors, and I make sure I proactively reach out to them. And that relationship typically comes very natural. It's not like I reach out and I say, hey, do you want to be my mentor? But it's just like they respond when I ask for help, right? And then every now and then I work with a coach, which is a paid engagement, very structured, that, who helps me achieve a certain goal, ideally faster than if I did it on my own.
What's the difference between a mentor and a coach?
Honestly, I think if you ask 3 people, you're going to get 5 opinions on this. I differentiate in a way where a mentor is an unpaid engagement and a coach is a paid engagement, but I'm not sure if that's correct for everyone.
What would you have some like a young person lean towards more?
Both. It's a coach may not be cheap, but typically is worth the money. So when you work with a coach and when you spend money on a coach, ideally they're going to provide you an outcome that is a multiple of whatever you invested, right? But also, like with a coach, I think quite a few people expect once I hire a coach, then I'm automatically going to see results. Well, you got to put in the work, right? So it's like it's still on you to accept that and to incorporate that feedback and whatever you get. So I would do both. And the first time you invest in a coach, it can be scary. Like, not gonna lie, the first time I worked with a coach and I hired a coach back in 2016, I put that amount on, I think, I split up in 6 different payments and 3 different credit cards. Because it was like a lot for me at that time, and I had limits on certain credit cards that didn't allow me to like spend more than a certain amount.
It was a risk for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
God, yeah, of course. It's a huge risk. But I think because I had skin in the game, I made sure that I got my money's worth. So like when I work with a coach, I show up, I prepare, I ask questions. So yeah, and I think, honestly, that's the Austrian in me. Like, I think, from like World War II and One, we were taught to like get the most out of whatever money we spend. So we got to make sure that we get our money's worth.
Buddy,
yeah.
are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Situation dependent.
Because my next question, I mean, you've been in like so many networking events. Like, how does someone that is scared to come out of their shell network with other people?
So I had events where I stood in the room and I swear to you, I had no idea who to talk to. And I was finding myself just standing there alone and just feeling like, oh my God. And then there's events where I connect so easily with people. And there's this book that I'm currently reading. It's called Gravity. And they did studies for like the best location of how to connect with people. And typically in a room, the best location to connect with people is right after they got a drink or right after they got food. So if you have
right after
difficulty,
the person that you want to talk to.
yes.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect.
And then, if you're an introvert, like prepare some conversation starters, right? That are a bit different. If you don't want to ask the typical, what do you do? How are you? Where are you from? Question. You could say, hey, you know what? I'm trying out these new conversation starters. Can I ask you some? Right?
Wow.
And most people will say yes.
I know, that's awesome. It's we think that we can't just come out and say things, right? It might be awkward at first, but it kind of breaks down, I think, the barriers of, especially if someone came up to me and asked, I'm trying these out. I'd just like to ask you some questions. Go for it. Like, I would love that. Like, I think we again, we're making up a story in our head that's different from what's actually happening in person.
Yeah, and remind yourself of the fact that people love talking about themselves. Nothing easy. You don't have to say much. Just let them talk.
There you go. So in the ad agency world, do you see AI being a thing, or how do you stay ahead of the digital landmarking space?
So how I stay ahead is literally by being in the ad accounts every day. And I've seen that trumps any news, any kind
And
of
when you
like.
say, can you explain, what do you mean you say ad accounts every day?
So working with Google Ads campaigns, being in the Google Ads account, being in a Meta Ads account, creating campaigns, optimizing them, analyzing data, and so on. Yeah, AI is there. The companies like Google or Meta are clearly going towards more and more automation, which isn't always of the benefit to the advertiser yet, because a lot of people lack enough data and sufficient data in order for AI and machine learning to optimize properly. So that's one of the major challenges right now. And in a lot of instances, also AI isn't yet better than a human being.
Hmm.
So while some people are saying, "Oh my God, it's coming faster and faster," there's so many flaws that I still see where I'm like,
Yeah, definitely.
this is still gonna take some time. Yeah.
Do you see it as a tool, um, or do you see it as replacing some lower entry level positions?
Honestly, right now a tool where you also got to learn how to use it. So it's not just like you just start utilizing it. That's not it. Like you really need that human mind, that human brain to think about it and see how it best fits in.
And what does the future look like for your company?
Hopefully provide much more value to more clients. We're looking to take on more clients, especially in the holistic healthcare space, like
What is your
acupuncturists,
perfect? What does your ideal client look like?
breathwork coach, acupuncturist, physiotherapist, chiropractor, any of the likes. People who already have their own business, so it's they're making money, not startups. They're having a consistent revenue flow. They eventually already got some employees, and they're just looking to scale. They haven't managed to kind of like crack the code, the ad
Hmm.
code to scale,
Hmm.
and so we'll help them figure that out so that ideally they have too many leads and get into a hiring issue, which some of our clients have run into. So yeah, that's a very happy problem to have.
All right, Pamela, as we wrap up, I have three final questions for you.
Mhm.
First being a call to action for you. Where would you like people to follow you or get in touch with you, or join your network? Second is there a question maybe I haven't answered to you that you can provide some value or advice for aspiring entrepreneurs? And then lastly, just a book recommendation for myself. I'm looking to get into more books, and so I heard the Gravity one already. But any ones that may have maybe been pretty influential in your life in some way.
Sure. So people are always open to connect with me on LinkedIn. I just say add a message, add a note when you send me that request so that I know a little bit of why you want to connect. And other than that, people can just go to the website ajala.digital.com. So that's AJALA digital.com. And then find out more about, how we help companies, how they can help the company grow. And let's see. In terms of book recommendation, Letting Go by David Hawkins. That's an
Letting go.
incredible book.
All
Highly
right,
recommended.
it's in my book list, or my
Yes,
Audible list, I should say. I
yes,
feel like I do
yes.
better in Audible than actually, reading physically.
Hey, everybody has their own preference, So
Yeah.
I like the physical copies more, but I also had my time where I like the audio versions more, you know. And other than that, I think your questions were great. I don't know anything to add. Well, the one thing I would add is, and that's been a theme in the past few weeks for me is, whatever story you tell yourself, better make it a hell of a good one, and you're going to be proud of it reading it later.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pamela.
Thank you
I
too,
appreciate
Lorenzo.
you.
It was
Yeah.